Good morning, folks. My name is Steve Rennie. I am the Renman, and this little program is called Renman Live, and our website's called renmanmusicandbusiness.com. Hey, if you're looking to do something big in this music business and you think you might need a little help, you are in the right place today. Today, our guest is none other than the guitar legend, Steve Vai, who's here to talk about a life in music behind that great guitar and a whole lot of other stuff. It'll be good stuff for all of us. The thing that makes our show unique, folks, is that rather than just watching out there, which is pretty easy, we want you to actually be part of this whole thing. This is show number 103. We've had some of the smartest, most talented, most successful people in the music business from all corners of the music business, artists, professionals, and everything in between. And we want you to be a part of this. This is your chance to ask questions of some of the smartest people around. We got a saying around here at the camp: you don't ask, you don't get, you don't learn anything. So if you're here and you're just going to lurk in the background, fair enough, but if you want to learn something, get involved. Let me tell you how we can do that. Before I go on, let me introduce you to our fine staff back there. In the corner on the controls is none other than Cody, the Trojan Man Lamnes. Okay, yes, and Kira, who's sitting next to him, is definitely a little nervous next to the madman. That's Kira O'Neill, formerly from Portland, Maine, or thereabouts, and then Miami, and now out here chasing the dream here in L.A. And she got stuck here. Tough luck. All right, Kira, we want the folks to get involved. Tell the folks how they can do that, please.
Well, for the early planners, you go to our event page on renmanmb.com and you post your questions. And we have a ton of questions over there. So I'm going to push everyone to go to the live chat, the crowd surfing chat, where I'll be presiding over that, and I'll get your questions over to Steve. Also, if you want to hit us with a link, you can post those on Twitter with Renman Live, hashtag Renman Live, and that'll hit the crowd surfing chat as well. So you can see the Twitter post while we're in there chatting with one another, which is a really cool way to kind of have it all tied into one place. And of course, you can call in, which we love.
For the bold ones.
The very bold ones. So call in, don't be shy. We love to take your calls here and patch them in. And
tell the folks what they get, Kira.
You will get a shirt. You'll get a Fuck the Gatekeeper shirt.
That's
Where's
what I'm
that shirt
talking about, folks. You want to do something in the music business. You don't ask permission. You just fucking do it. Right. Get out of here.
Yeah,
right.
Good shot.
All right, good stuff. Kira, everything in life is not free, but being part of the show is, but you have to do what?
You have to register. So
got to register.
It's pretty easy to do. I mean, you know, if you got a Facebook account, a Twitter account, just log in, sign up through that, and
fill out those blanks they're in.
Absolutely.
Huh? That's as easy as the music business is ever going to get, folks. I got news for you. All right, so you know what you have to do. Now let's get down to business. Our guest today is one of the most acclaimed and accomplished guitarists of our time, and that's for real. But to say that he's just a guitarist does not do justice to his talent. He's also a producer, a performer, a composer, a philanthropist. I first crossed paths with Steve almost 30 years ago. You probably wouldn't remember. It was backstage at a concert with David Lee Roth, who he was playing with, and then a little bit later, Whitesnake. A few years later, I was working at Epic Records, and we were lucky enough to have Steve on our roster of great artists. And even then, he found time back then to give back, met a young guitarist, a friend of mine. So he's here today to do it one more time. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome my good friend, Mr. Steve Vai.
All right.
Thank you very much. All right. Little applause. There you go.
Canned applause.
Sure,
man.
Sure. I tell you.
Big time.
Yeah. You know, Steve's been in a band, so he's heard all these gags on radios for years and probably thought they all went away, didn't you?
No, I know they're lurking some places.
No. Well, first off, let me say I want to thank you for taking the time to come in here today.
Oh, thank you.
A couple, 3-4 months ago, I was at USC. And Steve was actually speaking to a crowd of young musicians and music business hopefuls, and it was pretty inspiring. So I managed to talk him into coming here. So thanks for taking the time to do this. The first let me tell you, most of the people that are watching our show today are young aspiring artists, or aspiring artists, I shouldn't say just young aspiring artists, and people that are looking to get in the music business. And I've often made the point that there are as many different stories of how people got started in the music business as there are people that have done it. There is no checklist. So I'll ask you the same question I've asked everybody who sat on the couch. Okay. How did Steve Vai, guitar legend, start in the music business?
Wow. When I first discovered my interest, the idea of business wasn't really, didn't formulate yet. And I remember, it's one of those distinct memories that you have, you know. I used to go to my aunt's house, and she had this little spinet organ. And, you know, I weren't allowed to touch anything at my aunt's house. And I just was looking at it. I would always look at this thing and say, what is this? It's got these black, white keys, you know.
How old were you back then?
4 or 5.
Okay.
And one day when nobody was around, I went up to it and I hit a note. I hit a key, and a sound came out, and then I hit another one, and I realized that to the right they go higher, and to the left they go lower. And right at that moment, I had sort of like an epiphany. I just immediately, sort of like instinctively understood what music was. It was like this flood of realization. It was like, oh, I see, this is how it's done. So all the notes, I could all of a sudden hear and see in my head notes. And then also at the same time came the realization that the creation of music is infinite, you know? And I knew that there was these musical ideas right at that point, that this is what I want to do. And I never really, so it wasn't like a choice of saying, I think I'm going to be a musician. Should I do this or should I do that? I never actually was at a point where I made a conscious decision.
Yeah, you were just in from at 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah, it was just a fascination and an interest. And then on my 6th birthday, I got a little organ, and that's all I did all day long was plunk out melodies and stuff. And then, you know, it evolved from there.
It's funny how you see talented people in, you know, whether it's, you know, musicians or sometimes even people in business, or we talked a little bit earlier about Tiger Woods, who at 2 or 3 years old was showing just an almost unnatural interest, you know, that ultimately manifested itself in something big. Your parents, you know, lots of people start same way. They get fascinated with it. You know, you mentioned something that was interesting, that for the real musicians, it becomes a scream very early on. This is not whispering to them. This is like, was it screaming at that point where you're going, hey, this.
Yeah,
I'm not thinking about anything else but this.
There wasn't ever like a choice. You know, it's like it's like if all the world was green, there would be no green. So my whole world, it was just this. This is what I love. This is my attraction. So everything was always music. I didn't realize then how much I enjoyed listening to music, how deep it affected me. I'm sure this is the case for a lot of people, especially musicians, people who turn into musicians. So there was always this excitement and this deep sort of appreciation whenever you hear a song that resonates with you. It's still that way, you know. You hear something and you just you become part of the music, and it's a beautiful kind of a frame of mind.
Yeah, it connects. You know, it's interesting. I read an interesting story. I think lots of parents, I'm a parent, you're a parent, you know, when their kids tell them they want to get in the music business, you know, I think they're quite happy to indulge it on this kind of hobby side. But our world teaches us to take the safe route. Your parents were very supportive in a big way about your music. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, you know, as a parent myself, I realize you don't really understand your parents until you become a parent. You know,
Ain't that the truth, folks?
Then you realize
Believe it.
and what it is you love your child so much. There's such an unconditional love there that you don't want them to make mistakes. You don't want them to suffer. You want them to have an easy life. You want them to find their note, so to speak, and just live happily ever after. But you know, what you don't realize is that everybody has to make their own decisions, you know. So a lot of times parents, they see the music thing as a hobby because instinctively they feel that choosing a life as a musician is rough. You know, it's rough. But frankly, it's only as rough as you make it out to be in your own head.
We'll talk a little bit more about that later too. So, but your old man was.
They were very supportive. It was kind of
beyond the Call of Duty.
Oh, he was. They loved it. They just loved it. Even when I was like playing the Star Spangled Banner with my teeth and it sounded like hell. You know, they're like. My mother was probably thinking that, you know, his son, their son is a musical, you know, reject. But they just kept supporting and paying for guitar lessons and my father drove me to lessons and I remember I would go to school and I would have like a guitar neck. I was always just going like everything else. I don't recommend this, you know, but I didn't pay attention in school at all. You know, it was all about just this. You know, what was really amazing for me in school was a music class that I had taken that awoke in me to music, a lot of different kinds of music. But
was this in high school?
High school, yeah. But and the school would have issues with my attachment to this thing, and my father would say it's just too bad.
God love him.
That's what that's his thing, and that's what he does, and we support it, and that's that.
I love it. I want to talk about that whole idea of education because you know, there's all kinds of universities and people that are actually trying to teach people music, where I think in the early days of music, there were no schools to teach you. You kind of learned by
a lot more now.
I was surprised to see that you actually had such a, you know, like a real training. You had a mentor and a guitar player. You went to Berkeley. Talk about Berkeley, Joe Satriani, in terms of that kind of how they helped mentor you into this musician that you became.
Well, I loved the guitar. Now, when I was growing up, obviously you're exposed to the music that your parents are listening to. So I was like hearing polka music and stuff like this, you know, comedy records. But they had West Side Story. And that had a big impact on me. I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful music. But then my sister was listening to Led Zeppelin. And that was it. Once I heard Led Zeppelin, you know, my life kind of changed. And yeah, and as I was, as soon as I discovered the guitar, you know what I realized, Steve? I don't know if I mentioned this at the class, but I always had this odd kind of a fear when I was younger of being famous or you know, you hear things when you're young, or even at other times, and they can get lodged in there, and then they become your reality. And one of the things that that struck me, somebody had said, like, if you become famous, you lose your mind, you go crazy.
There's plenty of evidence back in those days, too.
Evidence, yeah.
Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison. That was all when I was in high school.
Yeah, so this was kind of like a concern. So being a musician was my own little secret, you know? And I would just, like, constantly all day long just be a musician. But as far as the idea of trying in the world, no way. I just wanted to be a musician. And then, oddly enough, there was one thing that I used to do that I look back at now, was extraordinarily powerful, that ended up to be the impetus for the unfolding of my career. And that was, I would lay in bed, and I'd put the headphones on, I'd listen to my favorite music, and I'd create this mental scenario of a character who was playing an instrument with this unbelievable freedom and this elegance and finesse and almost limitless. And the actions, there was this merging of body language and sound and motion, and it was, you know, because in your imagination, there's no rules. You can do whatever you want.
Oh, yeah, when you're dreaming, it's easy. It's perfect, right?
Yeah, so I created this picture in my head and refined it. What I didn't realize, I come to find out later in life, that you become what you think you are. You know, your reality is based on the way you see the world and the way you see yourself. So I was creating this character and slowly morphed into being this character. Now, there was a very difficult period where I had to get over this phobia of being famous.
Yeah. Interesting. And also, for the folks that are out there, I've talked a little bit about this, you know, when I talk to people what you just said there. The musical mind, I'm a golfer, right? And you just...
I could tell by your backyard.
Yeah. But what's interesting is that you painted a picture in your head.
Yeah.
And the great golfers will tell you that it's all about painting this picture in mind.
Yeah.
And I've become convinced from watching musicians, and hearing you say that reminds me just even more in watching, that there is something to painting that target, that vision in living color, the same way you were describing it in great detail, because it does kind of lead you. You went to Berkeley
College of Music,
College of Music.
So what I was saying was then when I started playing the guitar, a friend of mine, you know, your friends around you, especially when you're young, and how they bring music into your life has a big impact. And my one friend who lived 2 doors away, John Sergio, and I was into Zeppelin because that was my world, but he turned me on to Queen and Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, all this great, you know, progressive stuff. And he played guitar, and he could actually play. And I remember just saying to him, you know, you must be the best guitar player in the whole town. And he said, well, if you think I'm good, you should see my teacher, Joe Satriani. So I got Joe's number from him, and I was 12 or 13.
How old's Joe then? You guys
15. He was about 4 or 5 years older than me.
And he was already the gun.
He was always great, you know, always great.
Yeah.
So my lessons with Joe were paramount. There was two big influences back then. One was my music theory teacher in high school, which Joe had the same music, with the same school. He was one of the big kids, you know. And that was an intensive training with Bill Westcott, because from 7th grade through high school, through 12th grade, there wasn't anybody really in the class, so he piled this work for 5 years, or for however many years, of composing and writing and listening to classical music and all this, and learning music theory. So I learned everything you can imagine, because I loved it. I loved the idea of understanding the language of music. And I didn't really understand how to apply it to the guitar. So when I was going to Joe, he was showing me. That was another epiphany. So then I liked the idea of understanding music, so that's when I decided to go to Berkeley. And Berkeley was amazing. It was very different back then. But it was still, any environment that you're in where you're sharing music, sharing dreams, whatever college, you know, it's all, your experience is based on your attitude, you know.
Oh, God, I hear you.
Yeah, and it's the same in the music business.
Oh, it's the same. I think it's the same in life in general.
Absolutely,
you know? We have a bunch of questions that I'll be, after you leave, I'll be getting emails from all these kids. Dude, you didn't ask my question here. So I want to ask ask a couple of questions from some of our listeners here. First one, somebody had a question about this whole idea. You were lucky to have some mentors on a musical front. I was lucky to have some great mentors on a decidedly business front. But learning is key, and having some people to teach you. Throw that question up there, Code. It was the one about Berkeley education there. First one in the queue. All right. There we go. Okay, it's from Francisco Thomas, who is from Argentina. I love the internet. You know, it just brings us all together. It says, hi, Steve. I attended to the VI Academy, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, folks, in Saratoga. I can't thank you enough. My dreams came true there. You're the most kind person I know, and I took your Berkeley online course. You're the best teacher. My question about music schools, how much do you recommend to enroll into one of these if you want to be a guitar virtuoso and composer like you? And how was your experience? Well, you just talked about that. Great question there, Tomas.
Yeah, and it's not an uncommon question. Because especially for a young musician, there's a lot of choices, and they're afraid or concerned that they're going to make the wrong choice. You know, should I just go join a band? Should I just go try to work in a studio? Should I just sit in my home and start recording? Should I just go out? Should I go to a music school? Should I move to California? What should I do? You know, and my answer there is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you choose. What matters is how you align yourself with your decision. You know?
Got to commit, right?
You have to commit. And the way you, as far as music school goes, I always tell people it's not essential to becoming an effective musician, to understanding, you know, understanding music is not essential. If you're interested in it, you don't have to worry because you'll just be attracted to learning music. If you're not interested in all the little scales, what they mean, what the little black dots mean, there's no reason to learn it because it'll only feel, you don't ever want to get into a position where you feel like you're trying. See, that's a ticket. Like a lot of people, like I can sit here and I can tell you that, oh man, I practiced so hard when I was a kid, 10, 15 hours a day, and when I got into the business, I had to work really hard. it never ever felt that way. It
'Cause you were
never
just
felt
doing
that way.
it.
When you're absorbed in something, you don't miss anything.
It's not work.
It's not work at all. So you want to find that sweet spot where you have to first do away with any mind structures that make you feel that you have to do something as part of a protocol or out of convention. It's not necessarily true. What you really need to do is find in yourself the thing that's most interesting to you, and then be brave enough. Now, some people have to be brave. Some people have no choice. They just move that way to just follow it. So, for instance, when I say it doesn't matter what you choose to do in all of those scenarios, what matters is how you line yourself up with it. Like, are you resonating with your decision? Like, say, okay, I've decided I want to go to music school. Okay, so that's what I've decided. So now you think, okay, and you kind of create an atmosphere of positive reflection about going to music school. And if you can do that, and it's easy, you just have to find thoughts that make you feel good about it.
Yeah, I think it's good advice.
And there's a lot of great things about going to school. You're young, you're leaving home for the first time, you're discovering an independence, you know, and all this stuff. So if you embrace all these things, that will reflect in all your experiences. But if you lament, well, you know, why, you'll do that the rest of your life.
And,
you know?
and the fact is that lots of people, you know, your old man made a big commitment to put you there. You know, I've got a young kid who's in the music program at USC. That's why I was over there the other day. But lots of folks don't have that as an option from a financial, logistical, otherwise. And I think the thing that you said, which for you folks you should take note of, it's all about that committing to learn, because you could go online and learn. You have resources today that Jimmy Page and Jeff Beck and you didn't have even back then, and still manage to wind up being great guitarists. Let's take another question here about, while we're talking guitar shop. And by the way, while you were sitting there dreaming and playing, I sat in my bed doing the same thing, and I became a freaking manager. I was air guitaring my ass off.
Well, you gravitated to something that resonated with you more.
Oh, God, if I could have been a guitar player, it'd have been tough. It'd have been a guitar player or Mick Jagger. I'm not sure which one I'd have rather been. But
Guitar
I got the
player.
briefcase. Let's got another question here. There was a question about some of the people that influenced you back in the day. Throw that question up there, Code. This is from Born from Rock Metal. Ask, hey Steve, first of all, I just want to say I love your music and that you're an amazingly talented as well as one of my favorite guitarists. You're definitely one of the reasons I picked up a guitar recently. My question is, if you could play guitar with anyone that you never have previously, who would it be and why? Great question.
Oh my. There's so many great guitar players out there, and one might think that, because I've been asked this question, and it's, you know, you would go, oh, I'd love to have played with Jimi Hendrix, or I'd love to have played with Jimmy Page, or, you know, your heroes.
Yeah.
And on one level, yeah, that would be fantastic, you know, to be able to just sit in a room with Jeff Beck and just communicate and play, you know. But really, when you're engaging in a musical sharing experience with somebody, you really, the payoff is when there is a consciousness between the two people of listening, sharing, and being vulnerable, and all of these things that make for an intimate kind of relationship. This would be musically intimate, but like in regular, even intimacy, you need to be okay with being vulnerable, being okay with the other person's idiosyncrasies, if they have any, not being judgmental, and all these things. So finding a person like that to play with, because you could play with your hero and they may be brick walls. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Somebody told me early on in my career, he said, be careful about meeting your heroes. They'll always let you down because you have this idea in your head of what it is. And sometimes life doesn't deliver the same picture in reality as it does.
Could be. It's not always that way.
But interesting. One final question here while we're on the guitars. Another question up there, Code, from somebody who was asking about some of the current crop of guitars. You got it there, Code? Or he's on the phone there. Okay, there it is. Alif Putra, first of all, it was a pleasure to be up to the stage jamming with you in Singapore last year.
Yeah,
Dude, I love that. I got it. Just for him, it was like playing with Tiger Woods. My question is, what are the things that you see in this newer generation of guitarist musicians, and compare back to the days guitarist musicians? Well, the guys that you were listening were all kind of very bluesy based, you know?
Yeah.
And then there was this new breed of cats, of what you were one of them, that were just like this. I don't even know how to describe it, except it was just at a different level of off the hook.
Yeah, it's like off the hook proliferating. But, well,
do you pay
it's
attention
fascinating.
to these new guitars?
Oh yeah, sure. People send me, you know, YouTube clips and whatever, and you know, you don't realize how things evolve, the way people think, how it evolves, until you're in the future. And you're looking back and you're seeing how people thought in the past. And one of the things I'm noticing, there's a whole revolution that's happening in thought and creativity. And if you just look back before the internet, which was yesterday, you know,
20 years, but
it was what that was and what it would do was completely off our radar. Now, imagine, we were just talking, what would it be like without the internet? Well, the same thing holds true in all fields, I believe. And when I see the way the guitar is developing and the way people are approaching it, there's this fascination for the instrument that has never waned.
Yes.
In some people, they have this. They're almost like elite athletes, where they're going for the gold. They want to expand the universe of the instrument, what the capabilities. So on one level, the technical possibilities of the performance of the instrument have evolved into ways that I couldn't have really seen back then. I knew that it was going to go crazy. And I actually, it's funny because there's an interview that I saw of myself. It was about a 25-year-old interview. And I was saying there's going to come a time in the future where things like shredding will be beyond what I'm doing. You know, because at the time people were like, oh, this is when the idea of shredding, the concept of shredding came into being, and you know, oh, you're that guy, you're the shredder. So to me, it was just natural that it would evolve in some direction. And it has. And in some ways, it's reflective of.
In a good way or bad way, you think?
Both. It's according to what you know. Like I can listen to shredder guitar players and get a kick out of it, you know, but. You know, you got to find what moves you. And for some people, watching somebody playing the shit out of the instrument on a level that's just beyond what anybody has done, even though maybe it just sounds like Morse code, but really fast.
But it's funny, I've seen the impact. We had a guy by the name of M. Shadows in here. He's a singer in Avenged Sevenfold not long ago. And when you go and listen to those records and you listen to those guitar players playing, right? There's just no question that they weren't sitting around listening to you and Eddie Van Halen playing. I can remember the first time the guys that were like doing this bing, 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 and that didn't happen. I guess Jimmy Page did it with the bow, right? But the guys, Dwayne Allman and Eric, they had a different kind of thing. And then all of a sudden there was this explosion. So now I see kids 8 years old. Somebody sent me an email or a video of some 6, 7-year-old girl who's doing this. And it's just, I'm going, holy shit, you know?
It's like survival of the fittest.
So, okay, well, fair enough, folks. So, any particular names of guys, or are you just kind of just noting the general direction of it all?
Well, the general direction. It's hard to mention names. I mean, one of the ones that I kind of go back to is Tosin Abasi, you know, and from Animals as Leaders. He's just doing crazy stuff. There was this whole big group of, I can't remember, like there was bands like Chimp Spanner, and my kids would bring me, and people would send me, and I would just listen and go, wowie, wow, this stuff is just off the hook crazy.
Too much. We got a call on the phone here today. I'd like to reward those bold ones. Who do we got there, Kira?
It's our Renman U student, Matt King from Los Angeles.
Matt King from Los Angeles. Matt, you're on with Steve Vai. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great, guys. Hey, Steve. Hey, Renman.
Hey, how you doing? All right.
That's gonna. I see today. I really have to be the Renman because
you have to be the Renman.
Get 2 Steves in the room. Everybody's head's bucking. Okay. Great to be on there, Matt. What's your question?
Mrs. Cleaver, if you like. No.
Yeah. What's your question, Matt?
Well, I'm one of the Renman U students, and Steve, I've been listening, and fantastic. And you were talking about how you encourage people that are asking you, kids asking the questions about where you start out and how hard you have to work and practice. But my question is, at your caliber, you're at the absolute top of your game. What gets you out of bed kind of continuing to practice and work at as if as if it's your first day? Where do you get that motivation and passion from once you're already on top?
Great question.
Well, the same place that anybody that really loves what they do gets their inspiration from. And for me, my whole career, there's been one thing that's I can point to that's always been a constant from the very beginning to today, which was always of paramount importance, and that was a good idea. You know, an exciting, creative idea, an idea that just arises in you to do something that's creative and exciting because you know that the end result is going to be fulfilling for you. That's really it. I know that sounds a little unbelievable because when people think about the life of a successful person, when I say successful, I mean in the eyes of the world.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, because success is a, okay.
Yes,
So, they think that person must have worked really hard. That person must have been, fiercely dedicated. But that person doesn't realize that while they're doing it.
No.
Because it's a joy. You have to find, and that's what I was saying, to find your note, to find your joy, and it's very simple. People, and passion is a very, I think, over-analyzed. Passion can create, the idea of having to be passionate at what you do can create a lot of discord and uncomfort in young people because they think, well, what am I passionate about? I don't know what I'm passionate about. What is my burning desire?
Yeah.
And that can cause a lot of frustration because they think, well, I don't have that, so I don't have a career. And that's an illusion, and you need to be able to identify this frustration in yourself. What it is it's very simple. It's a very simple knowing in yourself of something that is interesting without any baggage. Okay? So when you can find that thing in you, when I say baggage, I mean, for me, I loved just putting my hands on the instrument and getting better. Now, baggage would have been, but am I better than everybody else? Am I ever going to make a career? 12 years old and you're thinking about a career. This is nonsense, okay? So where is this go? What does this mean to me? Am I going to be judged by this? This is baggage, okay? And a lot of times when a person is trying to pick a career, their thoughts are weighed down by this baggage. So the way that you cut through the baggage of your own thoughts, of your own insecurities and your own concerns is you recognize them.
Yeah.
You see that, oh, I see that I'm creating a lot of contraction. What do I do? What do I do? I've had that in aspects of my life, but never.
Yeah.
The idea of, that you said, what was the impetus to play, what keeps the ideas fresh, and what, that note, that space of just pure enjoyment of an idea. And sometimes just getting the idea is just so beautiful. It's like and then what happens, you get them, people get them, but then the baggage sets in.
Yeah, it's funny we talk about that. It's so fun. This is great therapy for me. This was cheaper than a psychiatrist did.
You want to sit on the couch?
Matt's one of our students, and when I was putting together this course, I was trying to verbalize in a positive way, but identify the issues that can take you out of that sweet spot. And I view it fear. You talked about
it all boils down to fear.
Paranoia.
Yeah, this is all fear.
Are the freaking ball and chain of doing something great. So to your question there, Matt, I love it. It's a great idea that gets you up in the morning. Let me ask you a quick one here. Do you sit there when you have that great idea, going to bed at night, going, okay, you're already getting up in the morning attacking the problem, right? Cody and I were in here. I was all fired up for you today. We were in here at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
For real. Walking in the door. Okay, we're just getting all night long. I was thinking, okay, this is how it's going to go. So, great idea, Matt. You got to have a great idea and don't think too much, right?
Well, I'll tell you what. Yeah, you don't think too much. Here's the key. Here's the key. Matt and everybody that this is the best of my ability. We all know what the feeling of enthusiasm feels like.
Yeah.
Enthusiasm, not excitement, not this passion, you know, this intense, but just enthusiasm, this feeling of, it's just this comfort zone of interest. It's like, okay, here's an analogy.
Okay.
All right. If you go up to a beautiful flower and you smell it, like a rose or something, in that very instant that you're inhaling that beautiful, and it's encompassing you, it might be a half a second.
Yeah.
You're not thinking.
Yeah.
You're thoroughly just enjoying. Your senses and everything are completely conscious and present. And there's this little feeling of, okay. That's what you look for in the ideas that you choose. So whatever is being freaked out about your future going to give you that feeling? No, it's not.
No.
So you do away with that thought. I know it's difficult. It takes practice. This is your practice, really. This is how you find your career. This is how you enjoy your career for your whole life. An enriched career is about smelling that flower, every idea you have. Yeah. And then things will unfold accordingly, you know. But that's the sweet spot, is just, and that's what I get every day. Now, through my career, there was challenges.
Sure.
Because
we'll talk about that in a second. I want to hold that thought for a second.
Okay.
I got a whole thing on challenges here.
You got to bang the desk.
No, that's exactly, because
shut up, I.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
That's
a great question, man. I want to just take a brief segue for the folks out there watching, because Matt mentioned this little course. Let me give you a brief preview, folks, if you're just looking there and trying to figure it out. You know, Steve's a musician, and he's talking about the same things I talk about as a business guy, getting your head in the right place, doing all the things. So I came up with this little course called Renman U Insider's Guide to Today's Music Business.
Yeah.
And Matt is one of our students, and I talk with these folks every Monday. We get together for Google Chat. And what it is, folks, is we put together this course. It's broken down into 10 different, modules, big sections of the music business. The first part, big picture, which we were just talking about, getting your head on straight and finding out what you're all about. Talking about making music, treating your career, managers, promotion, record labels, and all of this stuff. Within each of these little modules, we have 10 to 15 3 to 5 minute videos that help you try to get a handle.
You really got it wired here. This is beautiful.
Well,
man.
Not as good as some of your stuff. We'll talk about that in a second. So each of these videos are broken out. It's a 3 to 5 minute video. We transcribe it for you. At the end of each of these little lessons, we have a little quiz to get you to think about it, right? And then what I think really makes it special is this is our 103rd show, Steve, and we've had some of the smartest, most talented people around. Yeah. And so it occurred to me that having so much content up there made it difficult for people to know where to go. So we're trying to guide you in the direction and help you understand how the winners in this business think, whether it's Bill Silva, who you've played gigs for, no doubt, and or Steve Vai, who's up there on the stage making the music. They all have a perspective, but they all have a similar thing. Of talking to Bill Silva, it would be touching on the same point. So I hope you folks will check it out. It's $99.99, which is not a lot. I'll either talk you into or out of the music business. And I think it can help you a lot, and it'll help us keep our thing going here too. And there's a little free preview for you folks that are interested. So enough of that. Let's talk about that commitment thing here, right?
Okay.
I want to play you a little clip first from one of those smart guys that got. Do you know Bruce Floor?
Yeah.
Okay, well, play this clip here for some of the folks that are just tuning in and haven't seen it before, and then we'll talk about it. Go, take it away.
Rock bands, there's a 10-year gestation period. 10 years between the time they started making music and the time shit's really going off for them. Think about it. I mean, My Morning Jacket, Modest Mouth, Death Cab for Cutie. Incubus, right? 10 years. 10 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get into it, right? Now, let's go. Instant grab. Because they aren't really willing to die for the craft. They want to be a rock star. They don't want to live a rock star. And and that's where I see a lot of it is like, a lot of it has to be that no matter what happens, this band or this person's making music, regardless of all the things around it. And ultimately, they will find a level of success if there's talent there.
Let's talk about the commitment. You dreamed in your bed about being a musician, and now you've been doing it for 30+ years as a professional.
35.
What was the difference between the dream and the reality of being a professional musician?
Well,
as treasured a group as it is.
well, they're both delicious.
Yeah.
You know, the thought was beautiful. Like I said before, it's all based on your perspective. You know, the most important thing is to keep an eye on your perspective, because the music business is vast. There's so many different things within the music business that can resonate with you. It's a great business. I like it. I've always loved the music business. It's filled with creative people. It's one of the few businesses where, yeah, it can take 10 years, it can be overnight, or you can have a whole career and you can move around within it. You know, it's really wonderful if that's, you know, if your perspective is that you'll enjoy the ride. You will enjoy the ride, and things will come to you based on how you feel. You know, so yeah, that was always. What was the question again?
It was about the whole the whole act of being it. You have your son here
being
in the
it.
office,
Yeah.
you know. Being on, again, when you're sitting at home, you're thinking, oh, this is great, we'll be on buses, and this will be great, we'll tour around the world. And then there's the reality of packing your bag for the 1,000th time and telling your kids you'll be back in 6 or 8 weeks, or 9 weeks, or whatever it might be. You know.
Yes, there are challenges. And especially in my career, especially in the early days when my boys were young, they were babies, and you know, because I was touring, I had these huge tours, 10, 13 months at a pop. You know, and there was a balancing act, and I learned a lot from that. The thing that I learned, but unfortunately, it wasn't until way later, is it's not so much the amount of time. It's not how you spend your time. It's not how you delegate your time. It's the quality of your attention, focused on the things that you are giving your attention to at that time. So, for instance, if you're going on tour, you align with that. And there was times when I didn't, like when I was, all those fears that I had, these false fears that I created when I was young, I had to exercise those out. And through my tour days with Frank Zappa, that was, they were harrowing experiences. I mean, it was wonderful to tour with him and to be in that environment and everything, but mentally I was battling this fear that I was going to, you know, go crazy or become a crazy person. So,
and you work with some crazy people.
Some pretty eccentric people. But what happened was eventually I knew that this was what I was going to do the rest of my life, so I started aligning with touring. And now I adore touring. I love it. My last tour was 2 years, and we played 254 shows. But there is a balancing act, and you know, there was a period where I wasn't home a lot, and there's some, you know, there was a time when there was a lot of regret there because I missed a lot of my kids growing up. But then there was a period where I stopped touring those incessantly long tours, and I focused more.
Managed it a little bit better, I presume.
Yeah, but it's really, the question is because you're going to be confronted with a lot of things in any career. And they're all important. As a musician, you have to think about, okay, where am I going to find the musicians? Where am I going to find the money? Where am I going to find the time? Who's going to distribute this? Is it going to put food on the table? These are all concerns, and they're important, but they are not of absolute importance.
Yeah. Let me talk about something else you mentioned there. You know, it's in that same kind of mode. You know, if you're going to be a successful musician, you have to have talent, and you have to have the dedication, and you have to find your note and all of that. But the truth is, in the music business that you just talked about, you'll need some help to do that, both from musical partners, people to play with, and people to help you do it. It all gets down to picking the right partners, right? And you've had a very interesting career in the sense that as a sideman, I'll say that loosely, right? You played in the band for David Lee Roth, in the band for Whitesnake. You've also played as the solo attraction there. Talk about that whole idea of picking the right partners to make music with, and then if we have a little time, talk about maybe the business side of it.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very good experience there.
Well, it's a very good point, and the people that you pick will resonate with your intentions. Now, one of the things I always tell young musicians is it's important to find the right chemistry in all the various aspects of what you're going to need in this business, but it's foolish to depend on anybody to do it for you. because nobody will.
Yeah.
You know, and you see it often, people complaining about other people who didn't do something for them, so that's why they never could achieve something. Well, if that guy would have done this, then, you know, if the record company would have signed me, then I would have a record deal and I would have been a rock star or a successful musician. It doesn't work that way. You have to do it yourself. And for someone like me, I never tried to get a record deal because, like I was saying, all of these things, how you get a deal, who you align yourself with, that's all important, but it's not of absolute importance. What's of more importance is the quality of your inspiration, because from that creates your external experiences and the people you attract to you. So, and even more important than that, of absolute importance, is the quality of your consciousness, the quality of your, I'll say, vibration, so to speak.
Yeah.
And when I say vibration, I mean if feeling inferior, feeling helpless, feeling overwhelmed are a vibration, we'll just say, you know, that's a low vibration.
Yeah. Well, you interesting. You make me think of something here. You know, we had a musician who's worked as a musician in a band, a guy named Blasco. He's worked with Prong, and he's worked with Rob Zombie, and he's worked with Ozzy Osbourne. And he had an interesting comment. I'm interested to get your thoughts. He said, you know what? It's great to play with great players. It's even better that you just get along. You know, that they don't necessarily need to be the flashiest, greatest player. On paper, may not be the guy that makes that connection you just talked about.
Yeah, that's important, and it's especially important when you go on tour. You know, one of the things that fame and money can do is it exaggerates your personality foibles.
On both sides.
On both sides. On both sides, yeah, because I've seen it happen, especially if you go on tour, because touring can be very trying. So there's no secrets at sea when you're on tour. You get to really know somebody. You're living with them.
Married, right?
It's like being married.
To 5
even
or more.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is for me, it's always been most important to be surrounded by guys that are good guys, because if somebody's an asshole, when they become rich or famous or go on tour or whatever, they become really, really big assholes.
Yeah. Oh God.
You see it all the time.
No truer words have ever been spoken, folks.
And conversely, if somebody is fun-loving, generous, you know, when they go on tour, they're really great. They really appreciate the experience, and that my tours, like my last tour, that we're like a family, and that's so important, and that helps the musical resonation of everything.
Yeah.
And I'm also fortunate in that those people happen to be tremendous musicians.
Yeah. Including one young kid who's going to USC Music School, whose dad I was sitting next to in the audience out here. He sat next to me because I was the only other guy that was 60. And he told me about the story of you taking the kid out of there. Okay, we've got some questions. Who do we got on the phone, Kara? Anybody?
We have Matt from Minnesota on the phone with a very intricate technical question that I don't
Perfect.
know how to spell
It's a perfect lead-in, because I'm going to call this our. Okay, enough of the two old guys' rock philosophy here. Now they want to get down to how did you hit that shot, Steve? How do you hit that? How do you do that solo? So I'm going to call this our Guitar Geek session. If I had a guitar riff, I'd play it for you. Well, we'll start with this intricate question. So I got 3 other ones that all have to do with. Okay, Steve, great. How do you do this? Okay, we'll start with this. What's his name? Matt from Minnesota. Matt, you're on with Steve Vai. Let's hear this intricate guitar.
Hey.
Good.
Dig out the snow, Matt.
Cool. Thanks for taking the time out, guys. I had a question. So, Steve, you're just insanely good at guitar. There's no disputing that. And for someone to get as good as you are, they have to log just a countless number of hours with their instrument. But they also have to find ways to maximize the productivity of the hours that they spend with their instrument. So my question is, over the years, have you found ways to really get the most out of each practice session? Because just sitting down and like doodling, you know, it's all well and good, but it doesn't really take you to the next level. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. There are various levels. There's the period of time, and this is true in a golfer's career, anybody's career, where you have to hone your skill And that can, to a greater or lesser degree, be a mechanical process. And I was really good at that. And the way that I did that was, I'm kind of nerdy in the sense that I would keep lists of things. And I'd say, okay, I could write down 9 hours of exercises. And this exercise at this metronome speed, and if I make a mistake, go back. So I created all these parameters that I thought would make for the developing of great technique. Now, how much emotional investment from a 13-year-old or 14, 15, you know, there was more of the fascination of being able to move the fingers. So through those years, you know, you prepare the vessel, you know, you hone the skills, and it was a very joyous process because you feel like you're accomplishing something, you're getting better. But there comes a point where and if you only stay at that level of just keeping to refine the technique without introducing inspiration, your product will sound that way. It'll sound like fascinating technique. But to bring life, real life into the music or to anything that you do, you have to transcend the technique. The technique then becomes a tool. It's just there at your disposal to call on to express something deeper, which is the inspiration. Now, we talked about golf. Like, you can, it's very obvious.
By the way, I want to go and play golf right now. Hearing you talk has got me so fucking jacked up, Cody. I want to just quit. Garrett, get over here. Go ahead.
Well, it is very obvious in the case of a golfer, when you watch someone like Tiger Woods, thousands and thousands, maybe millions of strokes. But when you watch him swing a club now, it's almost like he's unconscious. He's not thinking at all. It's just, he's completely present in the moment. Beautiful Eric Clapton quote. And this is probably the best answer for anybody who is inspired to give. When they say, where do you come up? How do you play that? You know, and the best answer is, I don't know. I just become very present in the moment, and it happens. Now, this was something that practicing and practicing, you may not necessarily get. Being present is a frame of mind. It's not an intellectual building of a curriculum that will get you to a certain point. That's important. It has its place. Yeah. But in order to transcend that and make what you do natural and flow, almost like magic, like a wizard, because he's a wizard, you know?
Well, you mentioned something at Tiger Woods, and we're going to get off on this golf thing, but his father had a great analogy for Tiger, which I think you'd appreciate as a musician. He would say, you know what? Just paint the picture in your mind, Tiger, and send the ball into the frame. Right?
Yeah.
And I always thought that was such a great visual. And it's the same in the music. And hearing you talk about guitar, I'm seeing that through a different filter because I'm not a musician.
Well, the reality is you have no choice. You're painting a picture right now, and you're becoming that picture. Can you be conscious that you're doing that, and then take control of the picture you're painting? Because we're always just becoming what we're thinking. If you think you're a shitty golfer, you know, you're not gonna reach your potential. You know what I mean? Now, if you know that if you're constantly competing with yourself, that's good. That's kind of like will keep you on an edge. But you need to, just to answer Matt's question to the best of my ability, is there's a phase where you need to hone the skill. Now, you say, I put a lot of hours in to be a great musician. That's not necessarily so. You don't, some people don't have to put a lot of hours in to be an effective musician. I had to put an inordinate amount of hours into honing of the skill because and I know this might sound extraordinary, I'm not a natural player.
That does sound extraordinary, but
no, it's true because I've had students that were obviously natural, you know, and I'm like, well, how is this possible, you know? I had to work so hard. But the thing that's always very natural to me was the 4-year-old kid that hit the note on the piano, and then all of a sudden the heavens opened up, and every infinite musical idea, I became aware that it's an infinite. That was something different. That was very natural. But then this was very hard for me, but I enjoyed it. But that's that phase. So you don't have to go through that if you're not compelled to, if you don't find, see, that's a big issue for a lot of people. That I want to play the instrument, but I don't want to go through the thousands and thousands and millions of hours.
Yeah.
Then don't, because you can't.
You can't. I think it's a good.
Yeah.
Matt had a follow-up question, but I want to get through a couple of these other ones here. Matt, what's your follow-up question, real quick?
I just want to thank both of you guys for the insight you shared. Those really great answers. My follow-up is a little more fun. So in all the years that you've spent playing concerts, doing shows to thousands of fans, what's your favorite moment or a favorite moment?
It's impossible. Okay, well, this is just one that comes to mind right away. You know, when you're on tour, you have to usually get on stage under any circumstance, whether you're sick, whether something is wrong, whether your equipment isn't working right, whatever it is, you know, you're
showing up,
power it out. So we were doing this one show, I don't know, maybe it was 10 years ago, and I was in Barcelona, and I had 2 shows in one night. The first show sold out, so they added another show. My shows are 3 hours long.
There's no short version.
I had like 103 fever, 104 fever, really sick, 2 shows, and the first show I hardly remember, and getting off stage, I was just, I don't know how I'm going to get through this next show. I just don't know how I'm going to do it. But something odd happened, and I can't really explain it. I just got out there, and I started to play, and I kind of like had this almost out-of-body experience, so to speak, where I became that guy that I was sculpting in my head, you know, when I was a little boy. Everything moved just unbelievably flawlessly, and I felt like I was about this high off the stage. I don't know what it was. I might have been playing like hell, but everything felt magic, and everything just happened in the moment amazingly. And that was one of the things I go back to.
Sometimes when you get sick in sports, it actually, in a weird, perverse way, helps you to that place of unconsciousness where you're just going, you're just thinking about how fucking sick you are, that everything else is just...
Everything goes away.
You're just heading for the finish line effortlessly because you've already kind of given up.
You've given up. You've surrendered to this present situation. I'm sick and I'm just going to do this.
All right, we got a couple other questions. Let's go to Victor Haitian, just a quick one, because I want to talk about that live side of things here. Number 1, here's an easy question for you, Steve, or maybe not. Victor Haitian, throw that one up there for me, Code. You have 1 guitar, 1 amp, and 1 pedal. What would they be?
The ones that I own right now.
Yeah.
Well,
I imagine you have quite an assortment around the
I've got tons of stuff, but usually I'm kind of like old-fashioned in a way. I go back to, I have Evo, which is my signature gem, Ibanez gem, that I've been playing for many years. It's just like a warm place. You know? The amp that I use is, you know, I'm so fortunate, Steve, because I can. Well, they build it around my desires. I'm like, oh, I want a little more bottom end on that pickup, you know, and Larry DiMarzio will just send me 20 pickups. You like this one? You like this one? So, okay, that one. So I have this, I'm in this great situation where I can feel or hear something and then have somebody build it. So the Legacy amplifier that Carvin makes for me is my favorite. It's like the gem, like the Ibanez gem. It's just a warm place. Yeah. And the Stomp Box, I always like a little delay.
What do you call it? It's called a stomp box.
Stomp box is the pedals.
Oh, okay.
It's like a generic term,
right? All right.
Wow.
Can you be surprised, as a guy who's been in the music business my whole life, how much I either let the music, I felt so uncomfortable with that. I had no musical instruments. So I just kind of walked around and said, "Is everybody good?" And then I would disappear.
Well, that surprised me because Mikey from Incubus is a Stomp Box fanatic.
Oh, I did notice. And commented frequently, which is, how many fucking pedals? Does he even use all of these? I would walk by in a cynical moment with my coffee, you know? So there you have it. All right, there's your question. Okay, let me, we got another question on the phone, Kira?
No, that was just...
That was somebody collecting bills or something?
That was Matt making it personal, saying thank you.
Okay, that's, see, I'm training him well here. All right, I'm sorry we're not going to get to all the questions today. Steve's got a life, and so I don't want to keep too long. One quick other thing. We have a little section of the site called Ask Renman. Show it real quick, Cody. It's for all these folks that don't have a manager. I get, you get people sending you emails, how do I do this? And I get people sending them, God love them, that are bitching about, I don't have a manager, I don't have this. And so that's why I tell them, you got to ask questions, I'll answer your questions. I'll put my money where my mouth is. So we have this little section of the site called Ask Renman. And for you folks that are out there, if you have a question, I promise if you go to Ask Renman, if you've registered for the site, you post your question here, I will answer it within a few days, best I can,
Great.
Although I much prefer talking about it, Steve, writing down long answers. Can you imagine you and I writing down having to write them all down?
Yeah, one of the things I've been working on is just trying to be concise in a short period.
God,
it's hard for me.
It's tough to do that, So we've got one real quick question here that I'm throwing out there for you, Code. It's about networking, which I think applies to a lot of people, whether you're a musician or a professional. Do you have it there, Code? Code, you over there? Okay, there he is. Okay. He's does a lot of work, and I ride him like a
I
pony over there. I'm sorry, Code. I'm a grunt.
He's got some golf clubs out there that are not just for hitting balls.
Well, to be on the team here, you have to play golf. Kira's an exception we're making for now. Moro wants to know, hi, Steve and Rennie. Okay. I'm in a new city and don't know many people. What tips can you give to make some friends in the music? I get this question from musicians all the time. How do I connect with other musicians? And honestly, I don't know the answer to that other than you hang out with other musicians. What advice do you have from Steve?
Well, you need to be easy with yourself with it, first of all. You can't be uptight. Who am I going to, if you find yourself stressing in the slightest, that's the first step. Now, I know this, well, what practical advice is that? But how do I meet them? This is how you meet them. First, you become easy in yourself with it. And you're like, what would you like to do? Well, I'd like to find some musicians that I can. What kind of musicians would I want to sing? Some singers, some bass players. Make your laundry list of what you would like. Do I want to meet managers that have potential? Do I want to meet a producer? Do I need any of these things? Maybe I want to learn how to do it myself. What do you really, given your druthers, who do you want to meet, and what kind of people? And that's the first thing you need, is an idea of who it is you want to meet. So the question is how. That's not the question. That's not the first thing you ask, is how do I do it? The first thing you ask is what do I want? What do I really, really want? Now, when you're asking yourself what you want, be very careful of the baggage, the little voice that comes in and says, yeah, but you're new here. You don't know anybody. You're not good enough for that circle. Pick an excuse. So that's your work. That's your real work, is identifying when these thoughts come in that disrupt your note. So you found that I would like to meet these people. And then you don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to worry or care. You don't have to be concerned about meeting them. They will show up because you will attract them. It's very obvious because you're allowing them as opposed to cutting them off in your own mind.
Yeah.
So then you will find yourself in various situations where you'll be talking to people and you'll find out this manager, does this guy, do I resonate with him? Is his energy? Because another thing that you might find yourself doing is saying, you see somebody that has a label as a manager and you go, I need that guy. But in reality, what you need is somebody that resonates with you, that you can create a good team with, somebody that you feel can advise you and that sees whatever it is. If it's a singer, it's a communication, it's a thing that you have to feel. Do you retain that feeling when you ask yourself, who would I really like to meet? And then when you meet this person, do you feel that way when you meet them? Or is their energy something that it's like, no, this isn't right for me?
It's great. That's great advice, and I love it because, so often when I get these types of emails, everybody gets hung up on the who first.
Yeah.
And you said something important, folks. It's really about the what, and you figure out what the what looks like, and then the who becomes obvious when they walk into your picture.
Yeah,
right?
A lot of times people think the who, that person needs to already be successful or needs to have a name in order to bring me to that place. Yeah. But that's an illusion. It can happen that way. Yeah. But can you imagine if you and I were, let's say you and I were a couple of years apart. I was 21 and you were 24, whatever. 25. And and you met this young guitar player, Steve Vai. And frankly, if this would have happened back then, it probably, I would have been interested. And you're like, I like management. I have a particular brain muscle that understands how to do this stuff. You know what I mean? You're the musician, but you don't have a career yet.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you don't have a career. I don't have a career. But you see something in me, and I see and feel something in you. Those are the teams that go on to rule the world.
Great advice, folks. Priceless stuff here, Mr. Vai. I got to tell you, you know, folks, if you're not paying attention today, you missed out here. Let me talk about something else here. Again, wonderful career that you've had. You know, you have made a number of albums on your own and worked on other folks' albums. Show that graphic, Cody. I mean, it was a ton. Okay, that's like a library. Do you even remember all that? They see, you get to the point where you have to go back, oh, yeah, I remember that
every
one.
note.
Yeah, okay. So
and there's a lot of them.
You've done a ton of recording, but most guitar players, you know, in my first reference was as a big live touring act, either with somebody else with David Lee Roth, G3. I've booked a number of your shows over the years. One where is that business guy, right?
Yeah.
I want to play a little clip of you playing live, just because I have to see it, and then I want to talk about live versus touring, the two heads, and which one maybe you like the best.
Okay.
Let's play a little Steve Vai in action here, folks, in case you just tuned in and wanted to know what a guitar player looks like. Fire away, Code. Love it. See, that's what I was dreaming of. Even still, I drive down the street and I'm listening to classic rock and my fingers are going nowhere on my steering wheel. Live versus touring. Two different heads, same head?
Live meaning?
I mean live versus recording, pardon me.
Oh. Well, you know, there was a period in my life where I preferred various things, but I like it all. You know, the trick is, here's the key, is to find the enjoyment in anything that you're doing at any given time. So when I'm in the studio, I'm aligning myself with being in the studio, and I'm focusing on everything that needs to be done there, every little thing. Now, this wasn't always easy for me because I got frustrated, very impatient for many years.
In the studio?
Why isn't this, and anything. And I realized that my impatience was there in everything. What kind of a life is that? You know, so when you can slow down and bring your attention into what you're doing right now, there is a quality that flows into what you're doing. Because whatever you're feeling when you're doing something, it somehow flows into it. So now when I'm in the studio, and I know this sounds ridiculous, but one of the things that would really always frustrate me, and I took a weird, perverse joy in being frustrated and letting everybody know.
Oh, that's
and
the
that
best
was
part,
like,
is letting everybody else know.
of course,
Sure.
and like if my guitar went out of tune, you know, or if my batteries ran out, or if something broke, if the computer crashed, or if pick any one of 100 things that happen all day, and I realized, well, this shit is always happening. How am I going to deal with this? Am I going to be frustrated the rest of my life? You don't want that.
You don't want that, no.
So you slow down and you just become present. You say, okay, well, now it's time to get a battery. Can you find enjoyment in going and getting a new T for your drive because you broke that one? Or are you motherfucking,
Yeah.
So,
you're in the wrong club, man.
yeah, so then you bring that with you wherever you go. You bring who you are, whether it's frustrated, insecure, fear, angry. You bring it where, so it doesn't matter. People have this illusion that once I become rich and famous, or once I've made it, or once I get this, then I'll be able to live. That's an illusion, and you'll be looking for that your whole life, because okay, so I'm not like a big movie star that can't walk in public, but I do have some, you know,
Sure.
I've been on the cover of every magazine, I've won all the polls, and I've sold millions of records, and it's wonderful. And a lot of people say, well, it's easy for you to say that, Steve Vai, because you've made it. I wish that everybody could make it like me so they can see that that's not it.
Because you know what's interesting about it? It's so funny to hear you say that, because I learned something very early in my career. I used to caddy at this rich, posh club here in town, lots of show business people. And what I learned there very early on is that money doesn't make you happy, doesn't necessarily make you smart, doesn't solve any of those problems that you just talked about. There are plenty of rich, miserable people. I suppose if I had to choose between rich and miserable and broke and miserable, I'd probably take rich and miserable just because the bills are paid.
But you don't know you don't know that until you become rich, because the challenges are much greater, the stakes are higher. Now it's all a frame of mind though. It's all a frame of mind. You take who you are. Very interesting that we're talking about that, because I heard this thing the other day that I had a sneaking suspicion about, but it was there's this survey that was taken through the years of people, a study of people who have won the lottery and have all of a sudden won hundreds of millions of dollars. And what happens is there's a period of elation of sorts, and then there's confusion, there's confusion, and then after 2 to 3 months, they go back to being the same people they were. And this holds true for anything that you're reaching for, that you think is going to fulfill you. The trick is to find fulfillment right now, and then everything else is gravy, because none of that stuff can ultimately fulfill you deeply. Maybe for a little while, but that's why I feel so fortunate in that the thing that's very fulfilling for me is that moment of inspiration. That's always been there. That trumps everything. It trumps the insecurities even, because I have those too. You know, and all of these things. But once an inspiring idea comes, you become almost like a slave to it. And you don't even care if it's like a good idea or not. You have to do it. And that's what you look for, because then what you create carries that energy. And then your audience, whatever that audience is, it's none of your business who that audience is at first, you know? They'll come. Your business is the quality of your inspiration. Do you feel like when you're creating, you feel good, and you're able to keep focused and not worrying about these other things will happen. When it's time for them to happen. But the quality of what's going to happen is going to be in direct proportion to the quality of your inspiration.
Speaking of inspiration, we've talked to a few of these young kids today that you've inspired. You know, one of the things that I think happens to folks like ourselves as you get a little bit older, right, and you start to have some perspective. You know, I get a lot of enjoyment now from having these conversations with young people. That's how this whole show started. You have been doing that, and I'm taking note of the Vi Academy, right? Yeah. Which for me, there it is, folks, if you want to check it out, which operates on a couple levels. One, on that kind of sharing part of it, right? We've been talking golf and music all day. I can go out and play the same venues the greatest golfers in the world play. I could play Pebble Beach. I've had a chance to play with lots of professional golfers. Next week, we're going to have one, Gary McCord, on the show. But in the music space, that doesn't often happen. No guy can just go over and, okay, do you mind if I just go on the stage at Staples Center or Rock in Rio or whatever and play a gig? But this is a rare chance for people to actually learn about the music, right? And have a chance to play with a hero. Talk about this Vi Academy thing.
Oh, well, you know, I've always loved teaching. I started giving guitar lessons when I was like 14. And, you know, teaching is a beautiful opportunity to learn yourself, you know, because you're sharing, and that's how you learn. One of the ways you learn is by teaching. And it's a communicative thing. So I always had these aspirations to create this beautiful curriculum that encompasses everything that any musician wants to know. Based, you know, and I can do these things through my own experience in the business. You know, so I didn't know how. Now that was an idea that came, and when the idea came, it was like, that's what I want. I want to create this online curriculum that, you know, it takes you from every dimension of playing to the business. And okay, so that was an exciting idea. Now, the baggage didn't really come because I know that that's all I need is the enthusiasm, and then things come in, and then you recognize them. So then for years, I was asked to do this camp, but I always stayed away from it because I didn't want to just do a camp that was people playing the guitar and jamming all the time. There had to be something more. And then the idea it became an overwhelming, exciting idea, was to create this camp and to create a theme for each year. And last year it was beautiful. I wish you could have been there. If we were hanging then, I would have asked you to come and teach a class.
Yeah. Okay,
because
I'm in if you need me this year.
Well, this year it's totally different than your expertise, but last year the class was about building a song.
Okay.
So we went through the entire process of what it's like to, you know, find the inspiration for some of the ways, how to get a band together, how to create it, how to rehearse it, how to protect yourself with the intellectual property by creating a publishing company, how to register your song, what intellectual property is, how you need to protect yourself, which is something I'll just briefly, don't be intimidated by the music business. It's there to help you. Don't be intimidated. It's not that complicated. There's only a few things you really got to understand to protect yourself, and you have to be able to do that. A lot of times artists say, well, I'm the artist. I don't care about the business. I don't recommend that. You know,
by the way, folks, my face is hurting because all these things you talk about, Steve, you know, I talk about as a business guy.
Sure, because they all work.
Fear and insecurity, I feel like, well, I'm not a musician. These guys tell me to go fuck myself, right? But to hear you talk about
the principles are the same.
That understanding what you're getting into and organizing and thinking like a business, even from a musician's point of view, is vitally important on any number of levels. It's not going to help you write a song, but it's going to make sure when you do that you've covered the business side of it.
Yeah, and it's not that difficult.
It's not that
There's a few key principal things that you just need to know to protect yourself. And then you have to, what great Frank Zappa quote, you have to learn how to own and operate the word no.
Cody, please take, Kira, are you taking notes over there today?
And that was Frank.
Frank, God bless you wherever
God bless you. And that was, I mean, that is brilliance beyond, because so many times you're in a situation where you feel desperate, and you feel like, well, if I don't do this, but there's something not quite right, but you do it anyway out of fear, panic, and insecurity.
Yeah.
When really, can you embrace that high quality no? This is not quite right. Like you wouldn't, if you went into a restaurant and you had all this stuff on the menu and you like this, but everybody else was eating this, you know, you're going to go, I really got to order that because that's what everybody's eating. Yeah. No, you have the freedom. So, but to get back to the original question, I wanted to put a cap on it.
Yeah, okay.
What was
the
it?
VI Academy.
Yeah, so the VI Academy, yeah. So that was, it was so beautiful and successful, and it was all filmed, and we built the song, we recorded it, showed everybody how to record. We had a guy that Pro Tools up on the screen, punching in. We spent, there was time mixing it. There was classes on the music business. So, you know, this was the theme. And then we mixed it. And well, we didn't quite finish mixing it. Yeah. But then there was a class on how to distribute your music, how to embrace the internet to work for you, the iTunes model, all of the digital models, and this was a very effective class. But at night we were jamming with these incredible musicians. You know.
By the way, Cody showed some pictures. I don't know if you saw them. What was striking to me, and what I love about the music business, and why I catch myself talking about young artists and professionals, because I actually have a wide variety. You had these young kids here, obviously playing guitar, and then you had this guy who I'm reckoning is running some Fortune 500 company, but was in a band and thought, "Fuck it, I'm coming here too." You know,
there was every type. It was so wonderful.
It speaks to the power of music here. You know, I want to talk about one.
But one thing, just to cap off the Academy, this year the theme is the guitar itself.
Yes, great. Go ahead.
Now this is something that I need work on.
Stuff.
Total guitar geek stuff. There's so many beautiful things about the instrument itself that can be intimidating to learn, And it's the same as the music business, as learning music theory and knowing the instrument you're playing. You don't need to be a master of those things in order to be an effective creator of music, but it behooves you to learn the basics of the music business, the basics of music theory, just simple, you know, you don't even really need to know the notes, you just, this is a D, whatever it is, and the basics of what the guitar, you know, the guitar itself. So in this class we've got great pros coming in that understand and it can explain the different woods that a guitar is made out of, why they sound a certain way, what a particular neck is going to sound like, what dimensions are, what frets, you know, how fret wires, what they are, how pickups. I've got Larry DiMarzio coming in, and he's going to teach on pickups. Who can do a better job than that? I mean, this is the guy that, you know, has made a career out of the greatest pickups in the world, and in my opinion. And but how do they work? Who knows how the hell a guitar pickup works? Yeah. Well, this you get an explanation, and how to set up the guitar properly. You know, how to do the intonation, how to properly string it even. So this, all the esoteric stuff will probably be saved for my clinic, but but the real...
This is deep down in guitar world.
Oh,
right
you're
there,
going to
you know?
geekdom galore.
So that's in August, Steve, right? That's all
August,
happening.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, I got one final question. I have a whole bunch of stuff. We could go on for days here, but I know you got to take off. You know, I talk all the time about this idea of career versus hobby, and as you talked about it, you know, most musicians, I think, start, and it starts as a hobby. You know, for most people, you know, that hit that note, they're probably a hobby where you were seeing something different, and you wind up doing, you know, something different for your career. You were able to turn this passion, this hobby, into a career, right? And for me, I wanted to be a golf pro. It didn't work out. I became a manager, but I found that my hobby was the thing that was really my escape, and I only half kid about it, that it's my psychiatrist in golf and my passion, and it's so consuming that it just takes me away from all these other things. We did a little sniffing around here. I thought it was pretty interesting when I found out that Brian May was actually the rocket scientist.
Yes,
and he's talking about, oh, you don't need to be a rocket scientist. Well, he actually was a rocket, and a pretty fine guitar player, huh?
So was Annie.
Really?
Yeah.
Ridiculous. But that was interesting, but you are literally the first guitar slinger beekeeper I've ever met. In fact, the first beekeeper. There he is. Steve Ian,
it's so
the
cute you got that
beekeeper.
picture.
Before we leave, talk about beekeeping in Big Rock. Where does that all connect? I'm not sure I get it, but it does look like you're having fun there.
Well, the first thing was I didn't equate beekeeping as being something outside of rock. You know what I mean? People have this idea, well, if you're a rock star, you play rock music, then what's beekeeping? I don't think that way. Yeah. We moved into a home that was vacant for 10 years, so everything on the property was dead. You know, and my wife wanted these gardens, and I wanted some fruit trees and stuff, so I did a little research, and I found out that bees, honeybees, are really a wonderful hobby. It's really simple, and it's actually vital these days. And it was such a fulfilling little hobby. I mean, there's not much work in it. The bees do all the work, you know. I called up a local beekeeper. I went online. I read about it. I got a book. I got, you know, a hive. Eventually, I had 7 hives. It was so much fun. The bees are like, when you are playing golf, you don't have any great expectations. You don't have this pressure of having a career, of having to beat everybody. The only one you're trying to beat is your last score. And it's fun. But it's an escape. It's your own private little... And the thing is, this is key, though, is that you don't have pressure unless you've created this pressure of being... Unless you created this illusion of being a failure, which I know you don't, because you're very successful. It's something that you're very good at, that's very natural to you, that is not natural to others. And the thing is, how does... something that's natural to you, how do you tell people, no, I just do it. It's just, I just do it. And they're like, but how do you do it? I don't know, I just do it. It's just there, it's very easy, there's no pressure. But then in another part of your life, there's all this fear. So with the bees, it was a great opportunity to go into an environment where there's no pressure. There's just this, you're with nature, and bees are very, very connected. They're fascinating, freakishly fascinating creatures.
Well, I want you to know, Steve, every morning I get up very early and I have my coffee, my 2 pieces of toast with honey, and I saw the bottle of the Vi honey and said that you've
Did I bring you?
manufactured all-
Did I
no.
ever give you any? Oh,
But you've done a half a ton of honey.
Oh, my God.
And I'm thinking that should set me up for a month or two, Code. So I love it. Okay, one final
Actually,
thought
I'm,
here.
I'm
I know
always chasing the queen.
we're a little bit late here, and Vi and I could go on forever, clearly, here. First, before we do this, I'm going to tell you, next week I mentioned I got a golfer coming on the show. Do you ever watch golf on TV?
Oh, I used to watch it all the time. My father was
Gary
a big-
McCord, CBS, this weekend, if you watch the tours up at Pebble Beach. Next week, it'll be here in L.A. Gary McCord has become a buddy of mine. He's a golf pro. But, you know, he was out there, instead of being a musician, he was out on the road touring and trying to play in golf tournaments and trying to make the money on the weekend. He's got a wonderful perspective on that whole mindset. And again, so many similarities between that, right? He also happens to be one of the funniest guys on the planet and a huge music fan. So even if you're scratching your head going, I don't get that one, Steve, tune in. I guarantee it'll be a laugh and a half. And if you want a little warm-up, watch Pebble Beach, the golf tournament this week on CBS. Final thought here. When I saw you at USC, and you've mentioned it a couple times, and I think it'd be a good thing to end it today on, this notion of, as you described, see, I'm even starting to become like Steve Vai with the hands here. I'm going to go back to my golf thing here, where you talked about finding your note, this idea, and I just thought it was a wonderful metaphor for, you know, whether you're in the music business, whether you're trying to do something great in your life, is figuring out in a simple way what it is that gets you out of bed every morning and then letting it happen. Final thoughts here on finding your note.
I can give you my best thoughts on it. First, in order to, what we're referring to finding your note is basically the thoughts in you that resonate in a very positive way. We were talking about how thoughts can create a vibration in you, like if fear and anger and insecurity and all these things were a vibration, they'd be very low. But then there's very high vibration, and you know it. It's very obvious when you're feeling a high vibrational thought because it makes you feel good and it makes you feel enthusiastic. And then when you're actually engaged in that enthusiastic thought, you feel joy. And this is the process, this is the road. So that's your note. The thing that you do, if you were to stop and think right now, what is it that I do in my life that I feel no pressure, I feel no self-criticism really, I don't feel like I need to worry about being criticized by the rest of the world. It's very natural to me, it's enjoyable, and a telltale sign is when time stands still for you when you're doing it, where you don't even realize, you're not even, you pick your head up and it's hours later or whatever, and they're actually in that dimension, when you're in your note, there is no time. It's just presence. That's what your note is. It's the enthusiastic, high vibrational frequency of presence and creating in that presence. Now, the question is, how do you find that? Because a lot of people feel like this has to be a revelation this has to be something that strikes me in the skies, and I have to be so passionate about it that I'm willing to die for this, and I'm willing to crawl over other people if I have to. I'm willing to make my life miserable so that I can be successful at this. That's not it. That's really not it. As a matter of fact, that making yourself miserable and other people will flow into it. And it doesn't even mean that it won't be successful, but the quality of it will be more like poison. It'll spread poison as opposed to the higher frequencies. So that's the one thing that you got to kind of see is where is it coming from. So how do you find that note? It's almost a spiritual practice. You have to create a space in your mind for these feelings to arise, because the only thing that's keeping it is the little voices in your head that are doubting, that are being insecure, that are feeling fear or anxiety. And the way you do it is you can't just go to that place. The path is to recognize first what's keeping you.
Yeah.
And then you don't even fight that, because fighting, like if you say, shit, I'm being negative, shit. Well, that's just more negative. So can you see, I see that I would like to do this, I have an enthusiastic thought, but when I think about this, there's all this fear, there's this anxiety, like there's this. So that all you have to do is see that you're feeling that way, and you're not feeling that way anymore.
Yeah.
So that it starts to dissolve, and then eventually, what happens? It might not even be in the moment that you're trying for it to happen. You might just all of a sudden be doing something totally unrelated, and you get an inspiration, like, and that little feeling of, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we kind of did this, you know? And that's your note, and that's how you find it. You create an opening, and then once that little thread, the little thread takes hold, you hold on to, you nurture it, and you focus on it, and just that little, that's the passion. The passion isn't this, passion is like almost a fighting thing, you know? No, that's not it at all. What it is very, very simple feeling of, oh yeah, I like that.
And see, that is, it's funny, I talk about it, it all starts with those great moments of inspiration in this music business, and they're tough to find, but I think you said, when you're opened up and you get your head in the right place to do it, those things will happen. The timing and lighting and everything will come together to make it happen. I hope that we've provided you folks out there today with a little inspiration. I'm sure jacked up myself a little bit today. So I want to thank my wonderful team over there, Killer Keir O'Neill from Miami, Florida.
Yes, thank you.
The Trojan Man, Cody Romness. I want to thank all the people that took the time to call in on the phone today. We didn't get to all the questions. I apologize again. But I want to thank you for taking the time to ask those questions. My name is Steve Rennie. The show is called Renman Live. I hope today is the day you stop dreaming and start doing, and you find your own note out there. Steve, thanks so much for joining me
Steve.
today.
It's real nice to be able to hang with you.
We
like
are
this.
out of here, folks.
All right. Thank you, Steve.